What happens when Hollywood royalty sits down for what should be a simple late-night chat, only to discover the host has prepared an ambush instead of an interview? It only took 44 seconds of smugness and cheap shots for one of cinema's biggest legends to reach his breaking point and storm off set, leaving behind a stunned studio audience and a host whose arrogance had finally caught up with him. The late night with Seth Meyers' studio was buzzing with anticipation. Sylvester Stallone, the man who gave us Rocky and Rambo, was scheduled to appear as the main guest. The audience was packed with fans who had waited hours just to catch a glimpse of their hero. They expected laughs, stories about making movies, maybe some behind-the-scenes tales from the boxing ring scenes. What they got instead was something nobody saw coming. Stallone walked out to thunderous applause, waving to the crowd with that trademark grin. He looked relaxed, wearing a sharp black suit, ready to have some fun. The audience was eating it up. People were cheering. Some were even standing. This was exactly the kind of energy that makes for great television. Meyers greeted him with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm at first. They shook hands. Stallone settled into the guest chair, and the cameras rolled. Everything looked normal, perfect, even, the kind of setup that producers dream about. But something was off about Meyers from the very beginning. There was this weird smirk on his face, like he was holding back some kind of secret. His writers had clearly prepared something special for this interview, but not the good kind of special. The kind that makes you cringe before it even starts. The first few minutes went smoothly enough. Meyers asked about Stallone's latest project, complimented his long career, made some standard small talk. Stallone was being his usual charming self, telling stories, making the audience laugh. Everything was going exactly as it should. Then Meyers decided to get clever. It started with a seemingly innocent question about Stallone's early career struggles. Normal territory for a talk show. Actors love telling these stories. It makes them relatable, shows how far they have come. But Meyers had a different angle in mind. So Sly, we all know the story about how you were broke when you wrote Rocky, sleeping in bus stations, all of that. But I have to ask, Meyers said, leaning forward with that smirk getting wider. Looking back now, do you ever think maybe those studios were right to pass on you initially? The audience went quiet. You could feel the shift in the room immediately. This was not the question anyone was expecting. Stallone's smile flickered for just a second, but he handled it like a professional. Well, Seth, I think everything happens for a reason. Those rejections made me fight harder, made the story better. Sometimes you need people to doubt you to prove them wrong, Stallone replied, trying to keep things positive. But Meyers was not done. Not even close. Right, but I mean, let us be honest here. Your early stuff was pretty rough around the edges. The Italian Stallion, that whole thing. Do you ever watch those old performances and just think, wow, maybe I was not ready for prime time yet? Now the audience was starting to get uncomfortable. People were shifting in their seats. This was supposed to be a celebration of one of Hollywood's biggest success stories, not a roast session. Stallone kept his cool, but you could see the confusion in his eyes. Why was this happening? Every actor looks back at their early work and sees things they would do differently. That is how you grow. But I am proud of where I started and how hard I worked to get better, Stallone said, still trying to steer the conversation back to something more positive. Meyers nodded like he was listening, but his next move proved he had no intention of letting up. Sure. But speaking of growth, let us talk about some of your later career choices. I mean, some of those sequels, especially in the 90s. Rocky V, some of the later Rambo films. Were you ever worried you were just, milking it, cashing in on past glory instead of challenging yourself as an actor? The studio audience was now completely silent. This was brutal to watch. Here was one of the most beloved actors in movie history, a guy who had inspired millions of people with his underdog stories, being attacked on national television for no apparent reason. Stallone's jaw tightened. His media training was telling him to stay calm, to deflect with humor, to not give Meyers what he was clearly fishing for. But you could see the frustration building. Seth, I made those movies because I believed in the characters and the stories we were telling. Every project I choose means something to me. I do not make movies just for money. I make them because I think they have something to offer audiences. Meyers just smiled that awful smile and kept going. Come on though, you have to admit some of them were pretty bad. I mean, we could show clips, but I think we would all rather forget about Judge Dredd, am I right? A few nervous chuckles came from the audience, but most people just looked horrified. This was supposed to be entertainment, not a public execution. Stallone was being incredibly gracious under the circumstances, but Meyers was pushing him towards something ugly. Every actor has projects that do not work out the way they hoped. That is part of the business. You take risks. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they do not. But you keep trying, you keep working, you keep growing, Stallone said, his voice getting a little tighter. Myers was loving every second of this. You could see it in his body language, the way he was practically bouncing in his chair. He thought he was being edgy, provocative. Really, he was just being cruel. But do not you think at some point you have a responsibility to your fans not to phone it in? I mean, when people pay their hard-earned money to see Sylvester Stallone in a movie, should not they expect better than "Stop or my mom will shoot"? That was the moment everything changed. Stallone's face went completely cold. The audience gasped. Even some of Myers' own crew looked shocked. This had gone way beyond the bounds of normal talk show ribbing. This was personal. I think my fans appreciate that I have given them characters they can connect with for over 40 years. Characters that have meant something to people, that have inspired them to keep fighting when things got tough. That is what I am proud of, Stallone said, his voice steady but his eyes blazing. But Myers was not finished. He was going in for the kill. You know what though, Sly? Let us talk about what really bothers people. The way you have basically turned yourself into a parody. The slurred speech, the mumbling, the whole tough guy act. Do you ever worry that people are not laughing with you anymore, but at you? The studio went dead silent. Not a single sound from the audience. Even the camera operators looked stunned. Myers had just crossed a line that nobody saw coming, mocking a speech impediment that Stallone had dealt with his entire life due to complications during his birth. This was not edgy comedy. This was just cruel. Stallone sat perfectly still for what felt like forever, but was probably only 3 or 4 seconds. His hands were clenched on the armrests of his chair. The color had drained from his face, but his eyes were burning with a fury that everyone in that studio could feel. "What did you just say to me?" Stallone asked, his voice low and dangerous. Myers, incredibly, seemed to think he was winning some kind of game. He actually doubled down. I mean, come on. The Rocky voice, the Rambo mumbling. It worked when you were young and hungry, but now it just seems like you are doing an impression of yourself. Do not you think it is time to maybe try talking normally? The audience was horrified. People were literally covering their faces, not wanting to watch what was happening. This was supposed to be late-night television, not a public humiliation, but Myers kept that smug grin plastered on his face, like he had just delivered the comedy moment of the century. Stallone slowly leaned forward in his chair. When he spoke, every word was crystal clear. "Seth, I'm going to give you one chance to apologize for what you just said, and then we can move on to talking about something else." But Myers was too far gone now. He was high on his own perceived cleverness, completely misreading the room and the situation. Apologize? For what? For asking legitimate questions about your career choices? For pointing out things that everyone already thinks? Come on, Sly. You are tougher than that. You can take a little honest criticism, right? Wrong answer. Completely wrong answer. Stallone stood up. Not quickly, not dramatically, just slowly, deliberately, like a man who had made a decision and was now going to follow through with it. The entire studio held its breath. You know what, Seth? I have been doing interviews for 50 years. I have answered tough questions. I have dealt with critics. I have handled people who did not like my movies, or my acting, or my choices. That is part of this business, and I respect that. Myers still looked pleased with himself, like he thought Stallone was about to thank him for being so hard-hitting. But what you just did, Stallone continued, his voice getting stronger with each word. Making fun of the way I talk, something I was born with, something I have had to deal with my entire life. That is not journalism. That is not comedy. That is just being a bully. The audience started to murmur. People were nodding. Some were even starting to applaud. They could see what was happening here. Their hero was standing up for himself against someone who had gone way too far. Myers finally seemed to realize he might have made a mistake, but instead of backing down, he tried to play it off like it was all just fun. "Hey, whoa, Sly, it was just a joke. You know how this works. We tease each other, we have some laughs. Do not take it so seriously." Stallone just stared at him for a long moment. A joke? Making fun of how someone talks because of a birth defect is a joke to you? Let me ask you something, Seth. If I sat here and made fun of your appearance or your family or something you could not control about yourself, would that be funny to you? Myers was starting to sweat now. This was not going the way he had planned at all. Look, maybe I came on a little strong, but this is comedy. This is what we do here. We push boundaries. We take shots at each other. That is entertainment. No, Stallone said firmly. Entertainment is making people laugh together. not making them laugh at someone else's expense. Entertainment is celebrating what people have accomplished, not tearing them down for things they cannot help. The audience was fully on Stallone's side now. You could hear people saying, "Yeah, and that is right," from the crowd. This had turned into something nobody expected, but everyone could see who was right and who was wrong. Myers tried one more time to save face. Okay, maybe I got carried away. But you have to admit, you have made a career out of playing characters who are not exactly Shakespeare. I mean, your most famous line is probably "Yo, Adrian." Is it really unfair to point that out? That was it. That was the moment Stallone had enough. You know what, Seth? You are absolutely right. I am not Shakespeare. I never pretended to be. But you know what I am? I am someone who has spent 50 years trying to tell stories that matter to people. Stories about not giving up when everyone counts you out. Stories about standing up for what is right, even when it is hard. Stories about loyalty and friendship and never backing down from a fight. His voice was getting more passionate now, and the audience was hanging on every word. Rocky was not just about boxing. It was about having the courage to go the distance, even when you know you probably cannot win. Rambo was not just about action movies. It was about what happens to soldiers when they come home from war, and nobody wants to deal with their problems. Myers was looking smaller and smaller in his chair. And you know what else? Those movies gave people hope. They gave people something to believe in. They made people feel like maybe they could overcome whatever they were facing in their own lives. That might not be Shakespeare to you, but it means everything to the millions of people who have told me over the years that those characters helped them get through tough times. The audience erupted in applause. This was not the Stallone they usually saw in interviews. This was raw, honest, powerful. This was the heart that had always been behind those characters he played. So you can sit there and make jokes about my voice, you can criticize my movies, you can try to tear down what I have built, but do not you dare tell me that what I do does not matter, because it does matter. It matters to people who need heroes, who need to believe that the underdog can win sometimes. Myers was completely silent now. The smirk was gone. He looked like he wanted to disappear, but Stallone was not done yet. And let me tell you something else, Seth. I came here tonight as a guest on your show. I came here to have a good time, to talk about my work, to connect with these amazing people in your audience. I came here with respect for you and your show, but you have shown me nothing but disrespect from the moment I sat down. The studio was completely captivated. This was not just an interview anymore. This was a masterclass in standing up for yourself with dignity and power. Stallone was not yelling. He was not losing his temper. He was just speaking the truth, and everyone could feel it. Myers tried weakly to interrupt. "Sly, maybe we should just take a breath here and—" "No," Stallone cut him off. "You had your time to talk. You had your time to take your shots. Now it is my turn. Do you know what I think happened here tonight? I think you decided before I even walked out here that you were going to try to make me look bad. I think you wrote jokes about my voice, about my movies, about my career, and you thought it would be funny to ambush me with them." The audience was dead silent, but you could feel their energy. They were with Stallone completely. But here's what you did not count on, Seth. You did not count on me having enough self-respect to not sit here and take it. You thought I would just smile and laugh along while you made fun of me. You thought I would play along with your little game because I am just some dumb action star who should be grateful for any attention. Myers was pale now, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. His writers and producers in the wings looked mortified. This was turning into a complete disaster for the show. "Well, you were wrong. I am not going to sit here and be your punching bag. I am not going to let you disrespect me, my work, or the millions of people who have found something meaningful in the characters I have played. I have more respect for myself than that, and I have more respect for them." The audience started applauding again, louder this time. People were standing up, cheering for Stallone. This was the moment they would remember forever, watching their hero refuse to be bullied on national television. Myers looked around desperately, probably hoping his producers would cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. This was live television, and there was no escape from what he had created. "You know what the really sad part is?" Stallone continued. "You have a great show here. You have a platform that could be used to celebrate people, to lift them up, to share their stories in a way that inspires your audience. But instead, you chose to use it to try to tear someone down. You chose to use it to be cruel." Myers finally found his voice, but it came out small and shaky. "Sly, I really think there has been a misunderstanding here. I never meant—" "Oh, you meant it," Stallone said firmly. "Every word. You planned this. You rehearsed it. You thought it would make you look clever and edgy, but you know what it actually made you look like? A coward. Someone who picks on guests who come here trusting you to treat them with basic human decency. The audience was on fire now. The energy in that studio was unlike anything anyone had ever seen on late-night television. This was real. This was raw. This was someone standing up for what was right in the most public way possible. I have been in this business for 50 years, and I have never, not once, walked off a talk show. I have always been professional, always tried to be a good guest, always tried to give the audience something entertaining. But there is a first time for everything. Myers looked panicked. Wait, Sly, please, let us just talk about this. We can work this out. We can start over. Start over? Stallone laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you can just say sorry and pretend this did not happen? You think you can make jokes about how I talk, insult my life's work, try to humiliate me in front of all these people, and then just start over? The audience was chanting now, not words, just cheering, supporting Stallone completely. They had witnessed something incredible, something that would be talked about for years to come. Here is what is going to happen, Seth. I am going to walk off this stage, and you are going to sit here and think about what you did tonight. You are going to think about how you took someone who came here as your guest and tried to destroy them for entertainment. And hopefully, you are going to learn something from it. Stallone started walking toward the edge of the stage, but then he stopped and turned back around. And one more thing, to everyone in this audience and everyone watching at home, thank you for your support tonight. Thank you for seeing what really happened here. Thank you for knowing the difference between entertainment and cruelty. You deserve better than what you saw from this show tonight, and I hope you get it. The audience erupted. People were on their feet, applauding, cheering, some were even crying. This was not just about a celebrity walking off a talk show. This was about human dignity, about standing up to bullies, about not letting anyone treat you like you do not matter. Stallone walked off that stage with his head held high, leaving behind a stunned Myers who looked like he had been hit by a truck. The host sat there for a moment, clearly not knowing what to do or say. His smug confidence was completely gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. When Myers finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back. But nobody cared what came back. The show was over. The damage was done. In 44 seconds of arrogance and cruelty, Seth Myers had managed to turn what should have been a celebration into a complete humiliation. He had picked a fight with the wrong person, and everyone had seen exactly what kind of man he really was. The audience was still applauding as they went to commercial, still standing, still showing their support for a man who had reminded them all what it looks like to stand up for yourself with class and dignity. Stallone was gone, but his message was crystal clear. Some things are more important than being polite. Some things are worth fighting for. And sometimes, walking away is the strongest thing you can do. In trying to tear down a legend, Myers had only managed to remind everyone why that legend existed in the first place. The bully had been exposed, the hero had prevailed, and the whole world had been watching.